love that song so much. I just jam out in the background to it the entire time it's counting down. Like I want that song to be like 3 minutes long, so I can just be like, I can just pump it. But welcome everybody to the Tech Town Square. I am James Azar, my co-host, the amazing, the incredible, the one, the only, Eddie Doyle. What's happening?
Hello, everybody. How are you, James? Fantastic. I'm super well. Yeah, I know. It's pretty funky. Did you source that or did you create it out of GarageBand or something?
I sourced it. I'll be honest. I sourced it. It's I wish I didn't, but I did source it.
Yeah, I've got to appreciate, the older I get, the more I appreciate people with talent, right? Music is such a talent. Sometimes, you think that you're all that in a bag of chips, and then you try to sit down at a keyboard or strum a guitar, which you haven't picked up in 30, 40 years. Yeah, no way. I'd like to think I could create a tune like that out of GarageBand, but I'm pleased you sourced it. It's very funky. Today, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, online, everywhere around the world, thank you so much for joining us. James came up with a wonderful idea for this week's session. So we were chatting should I just go ahead, James, start talking about the idea you came up with? I thought it was pretty cool.
Go ahead. We didn't prep at all because we were talking about something else as we got on the pre-show today. So we're like, we know what we want to talk about, but we've done like zero prep in terms of how we're going to run it. So go ahead, Eddie, lead us off.
So we were talking. So James and I, we share some clubhouses, we chat, Mondays we like to talk about this session. So we were just chatting and talking about, some of the ransomware attacks and other cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. Now, we've mentioned that a lot in our show over the past few weeks, but specifically to hospitals where the most vulnerable people lie. And James came up with a really interesting concept. It's basically this. I wondered if Congress could be pushed to create some kind of Geneva Convention-ish thing so that we won't attack hospitals around the world. It actually blew my mind. It was really interesting. The Geneva Convention, for people who are unfamiliar, started in actually 1864. So that's when this started. And the convention continued with more countries signing on all the way up until 1949, end of the Second World War. Now, obviously, as you can imagine, the 20th century, brutal, bloody century with tens of millions dead, and especially when we saw mustard gas in the First World War and just prior to that, these new technologies coming out. Well, it's interesting to think today we have new technologies and somebody from the other side of the planet, through a few keystrokes, can attack the most vulnerable target that they know full well will try to either pay up the money as fast as they can or, well, look, put it this way, they're trying to get their patients serviced as fast as they can. And we've heard these horror stories, hospitals that have had to turn ambulances away, hospitals that have had to cancel critical surgery to people, right, and being forced to use pen and paper. So I wonder how that would go about. That's what we want to discuss with the audience today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to hit a couple of buttons on my LinkedIn to let my followers know that we're here too. And James,
I'll take it from here. We'll go to comments. First of all, good evening from Spencer, who's in Los Angeles, California. I hope Spencer is enjoying his early afternoon in California. And he asks, who needs coffee? We all need coffee, Spencer. All the time. The awesome Brian Parker from the Land Down Under. What's up, Brian? Says, hello, James. Nice to meet you, Eddie. And Spencer agrees that we do have great music. I also agree with Spencer there. We do have absolutely magnificent and fantastic music, which is brilliant. Now, taking to Eddie's point, I'm not proposing a Geneva Convention of sorts, because the Geneva Convention itself is about as flawed as an international treaty as the UN is. It's like when someone tells me, James, what about the UN? And I'm like, oh, let's talk about a completely worthless organization that's the UN.
Now, let me kind of challenge you a little bit there, James. With the Geneva Convention, though, so we said no mustard gas after the First World War. In the Second World War, there wasn't any, correct? Is my history right? So is it sort of working? Can we give them a little bit more credit than you're giving them, my friend?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because let me give you the last 2 decades.
All right.
Chemical weapons has been used on innocent population across the world.
Syria, Iraq.
A civilian airliner was shot out of the skies as a mistaken identity by the Russians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has the Geneva Convention done anything about that? Has the UN done anything about it?
Yeah. That hurts, man, because you're right.
So the whole idea is, could we create an international coalition that says, you want to, launch cyber attacks against our organizations, our infrastructure, our electrical grid, our government offices? Okay, because we probably do the same to you.
Yeah.
But if you go after our hospitals, well, that's declaration of war. If you go after our healthcare facilities, that's a declaration of war. That's unacceptable, and it won't be done. And what really motivated me to this conversation was on Monday, I read this article on Data Breach Today, and I don't typically like their content, right? I feel like a lot of their content is very influenced by trends. So could there be an idea of they had this article, and in the article they were interviewing people who ran a bunch of ransomwares, and they said, why do you go after hospitals? He goes, because they pay, and they pay very, very much.
Yeah.
So, that to me was just like, well, hospitals are paying because they don't want to lose patients, because if they do lose patients due to ransomware, they're going to have to pay malpractice for any patient that can't get into surgery or happens to die, right? They're going to be liable for that.
Right. Yeah. Good man. Good call.
Paul Cumming is checking in from lovely Jacksonville, Florida.
How you doing, Paul?
Did you know that Jacksonville is like the largest city in America, I believe, like from a landmass perspective?
Really?
My buddy Lee just moved to Jacksonville, and he's given me all these Jacksonville. We got a bunch of people from Jacksonville here. I want to see who this LinkedIn user.
Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. You are learning geography as well at our tech.
Am I right, Paul? Paul should be able to nail this one on the head for me. So David Vaughn is checking in as well. And this one right here is my buddy Lee. I was just talking about him. So Lee's been hitting me up with all these interesting facts. And Spencer isn't enjoying his afternoon. And Lee is showing how cool he is. There's no more awesome person for anyone that's watching right now. Connect with Lee. This guy is so passionate about education and about getting people the best possible deals in order to advance their careers or get started in a career. He's got an awesome startup. It's called USCERT, and it's absolutely unbelievable. And this guy loves this country. And he's one of my best buddies, man. I love that guy to death. So for anyone on here, just connect with Lee. I promise you, this guy will, if he motivates me, he's gotten me to start running again. That just tells you about how much, There
was a bit of resistance to that, was there, in the past then, James?
Oh, there absolutely was. So Paul says, at what instance will we start seeing ransomware target on patients on pacemakers? We've already seen that. We've already seen patients being targeted with IoT pacemakers. That's been done in Black Hat. That's been done in that's been done in Black Hat. That's been done at DEF CON. That's been done at B-Sides. A bunch of this stuff is done. Igor's checking in from lovely Miami Beach, Sunny Isles, Florida.
And that is why, sorry, because on the pacemaker, that is why Dick Cheney and other people of, let's say, interest that might be targeted elected not to have the Bluetooth activated in his, when he had a triple, whatever he had a triple heart bypass, I think.
Correct.
Because of that threat, exactly, yeah.
Correct. So Igor is checking in right now. Igor Spector, if you folks didn't catch my CISO Talk episode with Igor today, you guys should definitely go and check it out. We spent a great time talking. Igor is a shining CISO over at TrackPhone Wireless, who have an amazing mission, and they got the right guy doing their security. Paul talks about Jacksonville is definitely a huge city. we are now as the tri-based city. Yeah, they do have multiple military installations within Jacksonville. Paul also says, Eddie, good to see you, boss.
Good to see you. Fantastic. And we're also streaming on YouTube, right? I've got a couple of fellas texting me saying they're unable to get onto YouTube, so just double check that. It's probably a user error.
We are streaming on YouTube, and I see the stream is running just fine.
We don't want to. Yeah,
have him check out. Have him look it up on CyberHub podcast.
Yeah. Okay, I'll text him.
All right. So I will. So let's get into really what Paul's talking about here, which is ransomware. So ransomware itself, though, is significant on IoT devices, and it's been done on IoT devices. There's also been instances that I've been privy to, that I've seen but haven't been made public, that haven't been made public. We're getting really funny comments. So that completely distracted me. Yeah, I'm going all over the place. But there's been cases where there's been ransomware on these IoT devices and people have paid. To Paul's point.
Yeah.
So we'll get to more comments. Miguel says, hello, everyone. Hey, Miguel. Yeah. Paul says, Florida is definitely in the house. It is, and it's the best. I live in Georgia, but I love Florida, man. They've got the best governor in the country, I think. Hands down, that guy's unbelievable. Brian says, 100% agree. It is an incredibly horrible activity, attacking hospitals and aged care facilities and unconscionable. Strongly urge those with the inclination to stave this off to look into the HCISPP certification, specifically for healthcare. Yeah, but guys, that's why the CTI League, which Dave here can talk to, because he says I need to do some reading of the Geneva Convention. You're probably right, Dave. I haven't read the Geneva Convention in about 20 years.
The challenge with hospitals is they're a physically open environment, and which also reflects they are an open network environment too. They sort of have to be. And the people that you're working with are tremendously challenging. And so I want to sort of set a stage for everybody listening in to understand how difficult the problem is and why we can't just put up a firewall and be done with it, right? Why we're having to have a dialogue around a Geneva Convention style-ish, whatever we're going to call this thing, protection for people at hospitals. Now, they are open physically, which means someone can walk in and likely access the telco closet mildly easily. And then all they've got to do there is peel back the copper insulation or the insulation on the copper wires and throw some alligator clips down, put a little device in and walk away. Done. The other way, remotely, because they are an open networked environment, they become a harder target or an easier target to hack there too. Now, the reason an open network environment is you have physicians from all these different disciplines using all these different platforms, from Google to iOS to Microsoft to iPads, tablets, to some other kind of tablet, to on and on and on and on. It is just, I would say, almost impossible to standardize. That's the problem you've got there. And so this is why you've got these tiny little segmentations, but they're all over the place within that networked environment. I don't know how, and I would love to hear it from the audience. I'd love to hear from CISOs in the audience that were praised just now by James, is a legit shirt. See, now I'm getting thrown off. Thank you, I love this shirt. I'm a shirt guy. So I would love to hear from some of the CISOs and others in the audience here. How would we protect them? Because we need that multi-layered approach. We need the policy, which is what we're going to discuss a little bit today. But I would love to hear from you too. What are some better ideas on how we would lock down that kind of environment? There you go. Thank you.
So a few things to answer to what you just said, Eddie, is, and we're going to address the Geneva Convention thing because David Vaughn has refreshed my memory because I asked him to. And now that I don't ever like to be outdone, especially when David's with me, because, every time we do a clubhouse room with David is just the authority on stuff.
You already got outdone by my shirt, brother. What can I say?
David Hurley is the man, by the way. David is the man. So a few things. Number one, hospitals have an extreme challenge in terms of IT and security,
Yeah.
specifically because you're dealing with a multitude of devices
IoT.
along a multitude of essentially along a multitude of devices, along a multitude of departments, in a bunch of different floors, with some inpatient, outpatient stuff, some equipment, and so forth. So it's really important. So I kind of want to. David did hit me with the DM about the Geneva Convention, but I want to answer Spencer's, and then we're going to get to that. What is your opinion on going to a cybersecurity boot camp? Depends on the boot camp and depends what you're getting out of it. If you want to, if you have a more specific boot camp in mind, let me know, Spencer, and I'll gladly look it up as we're doing the show and answer it for you.
I would weigh in that I'm an old Stephen Covey fan, sharpen the saw. So in general, yes, loving these kinds of things. But to James's point, there are so many. Cybersecurity is such a hot topic, right? And so any mum and pop shop keep popping up with, hey, we got cybersecurity training, we got awareness training. Not seeing much that's super effective, but yeah, let's keep sharpening the saw. GC.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the Geneva Convention, because David was kind enough to DM me with some information, which is absolutely critical for us to understand, kind of because we brought up the Geneva Convention in terms of hospitals, which is one. The Treaty of 1949 that was ratified on behalf of the Geneva Convention was in their entirety or with reservations by 196 countries. But the Geneva Convention also defines the rights and protections afforded to non-combatants. So the Geneva Conventions are about soldiers in war, not really about hospitals or facilities.
Right.
Part of the rules of wars and the act of war is that you don't bomb a hospital, right? So that's one of those, but that's kind of like a thing of war. I mean, I know that when I was in Israel, Hamas would store their missiles in basements of hospitals, so that the Israelis wouldn't bomb the hospital.
Right. They use the so oftentimes then what they'll have is a knock knock. I don't know if the audience has heard this. I love telling this story because it shows you're on the right side when this is your policy. So the Hamas will hide weapons caches in various different places: schools, hospitals, people's homes, this, that, and the other. And on apartment complexes, where people's homes are, we still have to get rid of them, right? And so a mortar will come from Israel, hit the rooftop, but it's a dud. It's called a knock knock because it hits the ground and goes, right? Just knock knock, like that. And everyone knows in the building, you've got 5 minutes before the real one's coming. So you've got enough time to get human life out. You don't have enough time to take the weapons cache out.
Correct.
I just thought that was beautiful, man. If you can describe conflict as beautiful.
So John Del Cruz says, good evening from Virginia. Always love your talks. James, thanks so much. John, thank you for tuning in today. Eddie, you weren't being this technical in our Zoom. You give yourself discredit by saying you're not a techie.
I had the pleasure and honor of speaking with Paul earlier this week about some of the great initiatives he's doing with the veterans to employ them within cybersecurity, which I think is a wonderful thing. And I'm a former English teacher, so really I've always seen myself as being weaker in regards to engineering. But hey, I should get over that. That was 25 years ago. Right? I've been doing this thing a long time now. So yes. While others, engineers that I hang out with all these PhDs and people in linguistics and mathematicians, I like to call them. So, but that's a good thing, and I volunteered for that because here's a little Eddie rule, right? I always want to be the dumbest guy in the room. Right?
Yeah, I don't know that you're the dumb guy in the room, but for real, you're really smart. Don't ever underestimate yourself or sell yourself short. Paul asks, I would ask bootcamp, cert farm, or real bootcamp training. We're going to answer Spencer's questions. UCR bootcamp, you get security plus, network plus A plus. That's not bad, depending on the length of the bootcamp. And that's the Riverside County bootcamp at the University of California. I think that's I haven't seen it. Spencer, I'll take a look at it and let you know offline. But I do appreciate that. So David says that's the law of war. And then he loved that, talking about the warning shot that the Israelis do in Gaza before they bomb a building. Although, by the way, they didn't do the knock building when they bombed Hamas's cyber unit to oblivion.
Well, they didn't need to. That was a military target, right?
So, yeah, you know what's really funny, what's very interesting, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but the way technology was, the way Israel took out the leader of the Islamic Jihad, you guys should go to YouTube and look it up after the show. Don't do it now. Look it up after the show. They flew a drone with a warhead big enough to shoot the missile into the bedroom of the leader of the Islamic Jihad and only demolish his bedroom and keep the rest of the house intact and the rest of the building standing.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So, technology. Patrick Edwards says, smart move on your behalf. And the Wassenaar arrangement or the Tallinn manual were decent attempts of a NATO-ish cyber policy, but the U.S.
That's right. Yeah, the Tallinn
opted not to sign it. The Tallinn manual.
Remind me what do you remember what the Tallinn manual is, James? Remind us.
It's the manual from Estonia, I believe. It was something that was kind of put together after the massive attack on Estonia, and so I want to say that's what that was.
Yeah, and essentially it's a set of, I think, law. Is it law? Is it international law? I think it is. I think it's law. I'm going to Google it as you're talking. I want to understand this.
Yeah. The tangents are the best part of the show, according to Patrick. Yeah, they are, but we want to really talk about the idea of really addressing a uniform response to healthcare, because I feel like that's significant for a lot of different reasons. Simply because we have to address the fact that hospitals should be treated similarly to a Geneva Convention, meaning you don't bomb a hospital, so you shouldn't attack one from a cybersecurity perspective. But it is crazy. Lee says tech will enable clearing a battlefield with zero casualties. I mean, we now have UAV planes that are probably going to be dogfighting each other in the next war, and UAV vehicles and tanks, and so
robots, exactly. The Tallinn manual, let me just read you a paragraph on it. The Tallinn manual was an academic, non-binding study on how international law, current law, applies to cyber conflicts and cyber warfare. Between 2009 and 2012, the Tallinn manual was written at the invitation of the Tallinn-based NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it's a non-binding study on how international law applies. Okay, so that's interesting, because I think leading up to that, you had law that didn't know about the internet and no precedents for cyber war and cyber breaches. So how does the law apply? And now we need, and what we're going through right now, I mean, progress is painful, ladies and gentlemen. We are the guinea pigs, because now we're creating precedents as time goes on and judges make judgment. So not actually a law, and what we're saying is we want to, extend that a bit further and potentially create one, right?
So David says we helped write it, but wouldn't sign it, and he says because it limited our offensive cyber reach, and he also pats himself on the back and blows his ego beyond all human capabilities by saying, "I am never wrong, guys." Spencer, 6-month boot camp is legit. The 5 days, like Paul says here, or the 2-week ones, is where I kind of start to question what you could possibly get in 80 hours in 2 weeks that would get you ready to do a job that's constantly evolving and moving forward. So yeah, you've got that seems like a real deal. And David Vaughn again, I am never wrong, guys. So as we look at hospitals and we look at healthcare facilities, the responsibility of cybersecurity on some of these IoT devices that are being put in is a very interesting debate. So I had Kurt John on the CISO Talk podcast, and we kind of talked about that a little bit. And Kurt's the CISO over at Siemens. And our kind of debate was, is the manufacturer responsible for the security of the product, or should the hospital be? And a lot of us would say the manufacturers should produce a secured product, but the use cases for different products and the limitations of specific healthcare facilities could render the product useless with strict and stringent security. So, for example, rural communities with small hospitals or small healthcare facilities and urgent care, where to get to a really heavy trauma unit, it's an hour or two by ambulance, right? And I think like 30 or 35% of our country here in the US lives an hour away from a hospital. So people who live in small towns or out in the country, which makes about 30 to 35% of our population, some of them are an hour away from life-saving treatment. So when you create a very secure device, and let's say that hospital decides to buy it, if it's inherently very secure, meaning it has a bunch of different policies implemented in it, but you don't have the expertise there to handle it, that device is useless.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It is. And I would also suggest that, if you're into making vacuum cleaners, you're not a security company. Now, that's a little tongue-in-cheek because, of course, we're talking about hospital-grade equipment that is a lot more expensive, bigger investment in it, so you could essentially create a cyber division to make it a little bit more secure. But the reality is you're a vacuum cleaner manufacturer. And I have yet to find a manufacturer of any product, no matter what it is, if it is not built for military purpose and is not built for a security purpose, that is actually got great inbuilt security in it. And in actual fact, I would venture a guess that if all different vendors created their own security protocols for all these devices, they just wouldn't talk to each other. It would be a nightmare. I suspect what you need is a universal language of security by a pure security player to work inside the labs with vacuum cleaner manufacturers so that they can create security protocols that would work with that vacuum cleaner, that would work with the toaster and the oven, etc. And the spec would be by the pure cybersecurity company. Otherwise, I think organizations, while they should have security, can't be faulted for, if I'm a vacuum cleaner manufacturer, guess what? Security isn't my thing. So not to let them off the hook, but I just don't see it working if we only rely on the manufacturer. I think you need a third party to come in. And more than likely, because this is becoming more serious, and I'm not a proponent of this, being a libertarian, but more than likely, government's going to have to step in and go, okay, here's the standard, everybody adhere to it.
Well, that should be something the FDA does, right? So think of it from a safety perspective. When you board an airplane, the safety of the airplane is put in the hands of the FAA, right? The FAA reviews all safety procedures. So, for example, the FAA says that if you're going to have a plane with 180 passengers, right, like the Boeing 737, you got to have 8 exit doors, because in order to clear the airplane in 60 seconds, you got to have 8 exit doors that are usable.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So should the FDA, for example, have some sort of safety mechanism in place for that, right? And we've got some great comments here coming. Paul says that should be addressed in the SLA and MOU of who is liable of maintaining. True, Paul. And in most cases, that is what happens. The challenge, however, is the following: the expertise in most cases does not exist. So when COVID happened a year ago, one of the best things that have ever happened in cyber happened, which was the launch of the CTI League. And the CTI League were just a group of threat hunters and incident responders who volunteered beyond their day jobs to help healthcare organizations that were being attacked by cyber criminals as they were dealing with the pandemic, to recover from it and get all the cybersecurity help they would need. And so And a lot of the places that they helped all over the world were places where they don't have those resources. So when we live in a place like Jacksonville or Atlanta or New York or Miami, we're privy to top of the line healthcare. When you get into a car accident, they'll ask you, what hospital would you like to go to?
Yeah.
Because you have endless choices. That's not the case to 35% of the US population.
Okay.
And what ends up happening is those facilities are the ones that get hit. You don't hear about a big hospital. Los Angeles Memorial was never hit with a ransomware attack. And if it was isolated because they have the expertise.
Hmm. So
and that's where this debate, that's where this debate kind of becomes, should the FDA set a standard? And then should CISA be given an additional task of securing these places? And I want to get to comments here to some of this stuff. So David here says, Eddie, that he would take that bet.
Which bet was that again? What was I saying?
You were saying something a little bit earlier about who should be responsible for the security and whether, and
our manufacturers aren't. Yeah, exactly. Okay,
yeah.
Good. So yeah, me too.
Jack Barsky, what's happening, Jack? Only $4 billion. That sounds like a hiccup in light of the monstrous 1.9 that just passed. Just thinking, if you folks don't know Jack, you guys should definitely follow Jack. The guy's just unbelievable. I've had the pleasure of meeting Jack a few times at Atlanta Tech Park, and I'm sure I'll be seeing him again next month when we host the cyber fintech event there. So looking forward to it. But Jack, 4.1 billion is what the FBI reported, and that's what companies are reporting to the FBI, and insurance companies are reporting to the FBI. Only 4.1 billion, of which 1.8 billion was BEC. Igor says not only hospitals may have a limited ability when it comes to IoT devices, but product manufacturers also relying on their third-party suppliers, which complicates the device lifecycle even more. That is 100% true. That is 100% true. That's the supply chain of IoT devices is so incredible.
Yeah,
so challenging.
Yeah, supply chain attacks, exactly. This is for the next decade, for the next 5 years or so. We're seeing ransomware extortion now, where people not only are they encrypting people's files, but they're stealing the data. And if the victim chooses not to pay, they're going to expose those files online or sell them to the highest bidder on the dark web. So that's an involvement of ransomware. Supply chain attacks with SolarWinds, and all the IoT devices. The cameras in the Tesla building. What was that again? Was that
that was Verkada. That was a I think it's Verkada, but that was the essentially security company's own doing. There's a really intense debate about that one, by the way. Very intense.
How so? Why? It relates to IoT in hospitals.
It does. It also relates to the fact that their devices weren't really that secure, that even their admin credentials weren't that secure. Yeah, it was Verkada. Here it is. It's right there.
Okay.
And it was an account takeover attack.
And so what happened again? So Verkada is the manufacturer, right, of these.
Right, and they also kind of like an MSP, right, where they.
Oh, okay. They got a network. They got a backbone of some kind.
Right, they've got a backbone. They're able to look at your cameras, and they allow you to plug them into your NOCs and SOCs and all these different places, or your Fusion Center, so that you can look at it. So they took over someone's account and were able to access it. And then they didn't do it maliciously. They did it just to prove that this can be done and that there are privacy issues with all these surveillance equipment being put out there.
And that's, I think, is there more damage than privacy issues? Because I must admit, we're talking about ransomware, people potentially dying, and then it's like, oh, somebody's looking through the camera. I get it. That's not cool.
Well, some of those cameras are in hospitals. So imagine, let's take this a different path. Let's say, God forbid, the president of the United States is now in a hospital where these cameras are operating, and there's a camera pointing directly at the president.
He might have tripped up the stairs. Sorry, I had to put that up.
I don't want to make fun of a guy who tripped upstairs at a very tender age of 78, but definitely something to be concerned about. But yes, well, now I access that camera and I can stream the president laying in a hospital bed.
Yeah.
What would that do to the stock market if you've got the president of the United States, with oxygen masks on, hooked up to a bunch of machines?
Right.
What would that do to the country?
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's a threat.
So that's absolutely that. David says this happens already. The problem is the additive cost. That is what is unaffordable to healthcare, even though the cost profit margins are so bloated. Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to do this. It's a conundrum. And that's why I think this is where maybe expanding CISA's responsibilities, giving them more federal funding. We're spending $1.9 trillion. So take a little bit of that money, and instead of putting lizards on treadmills, give it to CISA to actually do something effective with it. Right. David says tonight's podcast is brought to you by the CTI League. Ohad would absolutely be loving it. Paul is laughing. David is part of the CTI League, and it's a CFAA violation for sure with the camera. I think Patrick is laughing at your comment of someone tripping up, going up a pair of stairs, and isn't that daily?
But yeah, you nailed the threat there. That's kind of interesting because I must admit, and I think this is an error on my part. I look at threats and I go, okay, so people are hacking cameras. Obviously, I don't want that. But you've got to think like a criminal. So, okay, good for you, James. And, you've taken it to a place where, yeah, exactly, that could be very damaging. So the point back with IoT in hospitals, of course, is that is there an environment that has more IoT devices than a hospital? Probably not. I can't think of one right now. So that's the problem we've got. How are you integrating all this stuff? Where's the standardization? We're building the plane as we fly. So I get that. But can we perhaps, come to ground, build the plane properly, and then take it off again? So, yeah.
So what if the FDA mandated that every healthcare facility has to have a cybersecurity professional there?
Well, surely they've already done that.
They have not.
No,
the FDA doesn't have a security mandate.
No, what I mean is surely every hospital has a cybersecurity guy.
Most hospitals do, absolutely. But the lower ones, the ones that are in rural areas, again, we're not talking about Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago,
it's
Miami.
The IT guy, he's taking care of the local little,
Right. They've got an IT guy who's set up their Office 365, who's set up their routers, who've set up their firewall.
Right. Right.
You really have to kind of go about this a little differently. Igor loves the idea of getting more money to CISOs and also funding CISA, Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, getting them more funding and expanding their reach to support these facilities. Yeah. So CISA today only has 2 representatives per region. Okay. That's not enough. CISA needs like 25 representatives per region.
Right. So you need that, and you need the FTA to say, okay, every healthcare facility, part of the HIPAA, or HIPAA obviously is something different, but part of the legislation for hospitals. And then, okay, so this is going to be a bit crazy, but the greatest cyber strength in the world is in the NSA. So why can't we have a division that looks internally from the NSA to help us with this? These are the experts. These people are just incredible. Now, I know that they're not allowed to look internally, but why can't we just change that? Why can't we have guidelines around them governing things like hospitals? Not governing, but helping in that regard.
So we're going to get to the funny comments in just a moment because there's a group there having a ball on our account, Eddie.
I'm happy.
So David says, CISA is a risk advisor. In some situations, CISA is also an incident response team. CISA has incident response team, David, that actually go and can help organizations deal with incident response. So I don't know that you need more advisors to answer your question. I think we need to expand CISA's mandate to support underfunded medical facilities in parts of the country that are predominantly higher risk for these ransomware attacks. All right. That's all I'm saying. The Patriot Act.
So by number of beds, right, in the hospital. So let's say, it's X number of 10 beds. You get this much, maybe not funding, but something along those lines, this much expertise lent out to you. 50 beds, 200, 1,000 beds, etc.
So now we're getting somewhere. So David says no effing way. Maybe I don't know if he means the Patriot Act or if he means expanding CISA's mandate. I believe in expanding CISA's mandate because they're part of the Department of Homeland Security, and you could technically do that. Here's the thing with the USCERT. Okay, here's the thing with the USCERT. Let's have this conversation.
Tell me what is it?
The USCERT is kind of like the central cybersecurity response team.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So I have a challenge with the USCERT because I feel like the CERT doesn't have the capabilities. I think the CERT is more about monitoring and kind of being an information hub. And CISA as an IR agency, yeah, I think CISA should be an IR agency. I think CISA should have we have 911 for emergency services. Yeah. I think we should have, whatever, 101 for cyber, and you call CISA to help you. Israel has something very similar, by the way. Israel has the Israeli CERT, and this might actually back Paul's claim here and David's, but Israel's setup and their CERT setup is very different because their CERT is part of the INCD, which is their essentially their cyber directorate that works under the office of the prime minister, meaning it's part of the executive branch of the Israeli government. And the CERT and the INCD, which is kind of Israel's version of CISA, are all one agency.
Okay, yeah, which is super bloody helpful, by the way, because, as we learned from the 9/11 Commission reports, there's a little bit of data with the CIA, a little bit of data with the FBI, a little bit of data with the NSA. Seamlessness would have helped.
It is. Now let's get to a lighter part of today's show, because there are there's a few comments here that are pretty funny. One, Paul says, "You nailed it, Eddie. You have to think criminal, but that isn't common cyber practice anymore." It is. David says he will pay for you and I to swap shirts. He pictures me having a closet full of black shirts of the same size and type. You're absolutely right. Like 80% of my closet is black t-shirts.
You just don't have to think. You just get up in the morning.
I don't. And David knows my wife. So David knows that my wife has picked out a few shirts that are a different color that I wear when we go out to dinner with friends that are typically over my black t-shirt.
All right, that's Halloween, ladies and gentlemen. The Tech Town Square.
So James is Paisley next week. I'll tell you what. Here's the deal. I will wear a non-black shirt on an episode, but we'll have to do a fundraiser. I'm not just going to randomly do it. So we're 2 months away from Memorial Weekend, and I'm going to find an organization, and next week I'll share it with everyone. Oh, sorry. Next week I won't be on the show. It's my wife's birthday. But the week after that, I will be on the show, and I'll share it, and we'll put a money goal. And if everyone puts it in, then I will wear a non-black shirt for as many episodes, as many milestones as we hit to support the families of our veterans, and people are into this. So
ladies and gentlemen, though, let's hold James's feet to the fire a little bit more on this, okay? Because we got him here. He's already said he's going to wear a different kind of shirt to raise money. But if we're going to be forking out our dough, James, I'm thinking you've got to wear a goofy shirt.
You guys pick the shirt, I'll wear it.
Okay.
And the more money we raise, the goofier the shirt will be.
There you go. Exactly. Okay.
People really want to see me in something other than black. Just come to my shul on Saturday. I wear white to shul on Saturday.
And for $1,000 donation, he'll wear a shirt with Joe Biden's face on it.
I
got you there, buddy.
All right, you did get me there. So David here has a very cool comment. So The SCIRTs can vary in purpose based on sector. For example, the law enforcement may focus on prosecuting cybercrime incidents by collecting, analyzing computer forensics data from affected or involved systems. Government CSIRTs, on the other hand, may be involved in security awareness training and general incident response, incident handling activities, but never perform any forensic activities. Forensic activities may be handled by special investigators within the government agencies instead. That's right. FBI, Secret Service, the local BIs, like in Georgia, it's the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. In Florida, it's the Florida Bureau of Investigation. In Colorado, it's the CBI, California CBI, etc. They do a lot of those forensics locally. So it's there. Danielle, good evening. Thank you for joining. Says Rhode Island used to have one of those numbers to call about cybersecurity, but I looked it up and it's not currently up and running. And that's the problem. There's very little incentive there. And here's a great one. We talked about this previously on the show. Remember, the State National Guard does DCOE and cyber protection teams. We talked about this, I think, a month ago, right, Eddie?
Yeah.
On the town square, we talked about, could we fund the National Guard to do this? So I'd pay to see James. Unbelievable. This is going to happen, folks. All can be tasked, ordered by state governor or federally through the president. The challenge is funding, folks. Funding. Paul says, if we can actually realign what entry level is, we could bring these talents and passionate people in to help grow into our demand. Yeah, that's very, very doable.
A brilliant point, because now we're getting cybersecurity slowly. Certainly, my kids in school are doing coding, right? So I think for the last, at least from my GAM, the last 5 or 6 years, coding's become a thing where everybody does that. How about introducing cyber hygiene at school in the same way they do sex ed and these kinds of subject matters? Let's do cyber hygiene in high school. Let's get everybody trained from an early age, or at least aware. Bloody good point, Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul brings up another great point. Let's keep going here. Danielle wants me to wear an ugly sweater. David is putting $100 on that right meow. Paul is matching that hundo, so we already got 200 right here. I'll be wearing my Trace Lab shirts next event in sponsorship of OSNet for finding missing persons. Yeah, I've been supporting Wounded Warrior for a very, very long time. So very interested about, I'll find a really cool cause for Memorial Weekend we want to raise money to, but it's probably going to be something. Yeah. The Goggins 4x4x48. Right. Lee and I were supposed to do that. I was actually training for it before we had a change of plan. David says CISA doesn't do IR. They do incident management. That is true. They do incident management in coordination with the FBI as well as the Cyber National Mission Force. Also very, very true. And Brian loves the idea of seeing me in something other than black, assuming, which would be very, very, very fascinating, because I wear white on Saturdays. And for my wife's birthday next week, I'm not allowed to wear black. So she likes to see me. David says, if plugs are this easy, I'll have James wearing a Spy Cloud shirt in no time. If they sponsor my show, I absolutely will. Paul says, I will talk to Jack's Wounded Warrior and get Paisley Under Armour polo made for you. That would be a winner. That would be a great cause. There's another organization I'm vetting now for vets. And it's supporting the children of deceased brothers and sisters in the armed forces. So it's raising money for them to be able to get scholarships to go to school and help them through that part. I will get both of them a okay, we're now just getting like, all right, on the show, you'll get a shout out. What's the idea of cyber hygienes in school? Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on here. I love today's. You guys are killing us today. These comments are absolutely on point.
And think about this. This is a stretch. This is while I'm looking at all these amusing comments, the back of my brain is still working on the dialogue, and I was starting to think that you train people in schools, and then, the Geneva Convention is something that I think most decent citizens, except the real scumbags of the earth, so people that would be our enemies, but are also decent citizens fighting for their rights, as it were, would obey to some degree the Geneva Convention. Think about prisons. In prison, somebody that's hurt a child, they get their ass kicked, right? And so, if we start to educate, although the other countries are the ones that are going to have to do this, so maybe it wouldn't work unless they did it. But if we started to say to people, hey, look, let's have some empathy here for this portion of the people group that are their most vulnerable, so that on the dark web, it acts kind of like the prison does. Hey, you went after a hospital. You're a dirtbag. We're going to come and get you. We're going to annihilate you digitally, right? Other criminals on the dark web. You never know. It's a stretch. It's a stretch. What does Brian say? So
Brian says the idea of cyber in school. Lee brings up, Black Rifle, great coffee company. Who's bringing the holiday fruitcake? Love it.
Cool.
So Frank here brings up something I absolutely love. And Frank, you're on point here. Let's teach our devs secure programming. I know so many fresh out of college developers that have no awareness of the OWASP top 10 or common web vulnerabilities, period. Indeed. And we're trying to integrate that into their, CI/CD pipelines and into all these different things. But secure programming does exist in some organizations. Medina here says that does secure programming exist, or is it an enigma? It's not an enigma, Medina. It's not. It does exist, but the problem is we're teaching people how to develop. We're not teaching them security. We're getting them how to code in Python. We're teaching them how to pull repositories from GitHub and GitLab and all these different places and work within open source, but we're not really teaching security to them. And then what ends up happening is organizationally. So I'll give you a prime example. I actually had to do this. I had to go to developers in our company and I had to say, all right, stop. We're not going to write code for the next 10 days. And we're all going to go through a crash course of secure code development. And we did code reviews. We implemented tools into the CI/CD pipelines. We implemented tools into the IDEs so that these people can actually do it. I don't agree with the idea that secure programming exists. Lazy programmers do not. Some programmers aren't incentivized to deal with security. They're incentivized to develop. And until we change that perception within an organization, so we've developed a security bonus for our DevOps team. And that security bonus set is for the people with the highest percentage of code security at the end of every month get a bonus, $500 bonus, $1,000 bonus. Right. So now they're competing for this.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Right? Like we have to incentivize it. We have to change behavior, and it's not going to be done any other way.
Right.
So
I was going to ask you then, what was the result of your initiative then 6 months later? You took 10 days off for coding. You went into a little security boot camp. 6 months
and then we came back. We instituted a competition. We had a giveaway on the competition. We saw that it worked. People were really into the contest. So we looked at and said, all right, now let's not have one and see what happened. And we had a bit of a regression. So then we brought the contest back and we said, okay, we're going to have to motivate these guys financially until it becomes part of their DNA.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
So, and then now we're just going to say, if you're a DevSecOps person, you're going to get a higher base than just a regular DevOps person.
100%.
So Danielle says she likes the idea of cyber hygiene in schools. Paul says STEM is there, but when we look at the original topic of medical field, we would need to integrate biomedicine in the high school STEM. Yes, and we would need to integrate security into the medical field. Because here's the thing. If you're going to be a cybersecurity professional in a hospital, you got to understand medicine. So you not only need to understand cyber and technology, you also need to understand medicine.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking about a select group of people where this isn't as wide range. To be a CISO in the medical field, you really got to have a passion for medicine. Like if you're a CISO in finance, like Ron Green, the CISO over at MasterCard, there's very few people I know that have the passion for defending the payment system like Ron Green does. And so Like that's just, you got to have the passion for it. So yeah, it does start at STEM, but I'm going to have a nurse on CISO Talk in the next few weeks. Actually at the end of April. And she's a nurse that started studying to become a cybersecurity professional because she saw all the problems nurses were having with security.
Cool. Yeah. Sweet.
So it'll be a very interesting episode. Frank,
good.
does secure programming exist, or is it we answered that? That is the question. I hope we answered that for you, Frank, a little bit. Several government agencies tried school programs of free literature handout media. I couldn't get schools to take that stuff. Yeah, schools aren't incentivized to really do cyber hygiene. That has to come from the PTA. That has to come from the parents. It can't come from the school.
The funding comes from the state, right? And a little bit from the federal. So surely the federal government or state government can just mandate. It's a state government, right? The state can just mandate it.
So one thing, one thing I do is because we have relationships and we're in tech, right? I would say that, I've reached out to the FBI and CISA and Secret Service, and I bring them to the school to talk to the kids.
Yeah, and that's cool. But I'm saying I think the state government should mandate it like they do English, language lessons.
Again, I love it when everyone suggests government should do something. Government is about as useless as an old pair of socks. Let's just do that. Like the idea of cyber hygiene classes in school, the kids will probably figure this all out. So I'll give you an example. Naomi Buckwalter, who I do CISO Thursdays with, her 7-year-old kid was able to bypass the security controls on the school iPad. And he got so excited, he went out and he, like, in the middle of class, and he goes, hey everyone, I found a way where when the teacher locks her iPad, it doesn't lock. Like you can do it. And he got punished for it. So when kids are like actually being into cyber, and instead of taking that as a learning opportunity, they punish the kid. I mean, come on, we got to educate teachers. But have you guys seen some of the teachers in public school today? I mean, God, our generation's screwed. We got to fix that. Love it, Patrick, talking about the idea of cyber hygiene. Danielle says Agile includes cybersecurity and DevOps, but it's not mandatory. Indeed. Lee says the CERT Nexus CSC exam might do just that. Danielle says, Paul says, Danielle, totally valid point. We also have people chasing PMP over Agile Scrum when there's a huge demand. Also very true. I just did a case study on Microsoft's SDL. Interesting reading from the SANS Institute. Do you mind sending that over to me? I think that's you, David. I believe that's you, David. No, that's Medina. Medina, can you send that case study to me, please? I'd love to see it. Miguel says, I would like to hear from the audience. What is the ratio of cybersecurity staff to users? That depends on the company. That really does depend on the company.
People's pockets, like, the big banks, obviously, Jamie Dimon boasts they spend $1 billion a year in cyber. They probably do, right? So they've got an amazing team. Yes, for Cyber Nurse, that sounds cool, doesn't it? Sounds like something out of Cyberpunk.
It does. Yeah. It's absolutely awesome. Paul Cummings might as well. We have cyber first responders.
Sure. Yep. Response teams. Yeah.
Igor says, awesome to get insights, challenges from a first-hand nurse. Indeed. A cyber MD. Love that.
Cyber MD. Very cool.
Cyber pathogens.
Okay. We're starting a whole new industry here today. That's it. We're going to quit. We're going to start a company that's going to service healthcare. I want to be a cyberologist. Sounds like a prompt.
Indeed.
Maybe not.
Eddie, state and federal do provide funding. The PTA, however, does not have enough InfoSec cyber parents to trump that extra curriculum being voted. Indeed, they don't. You got to be on the PTA. The easiest thing for any of us to do is get on a PTA.
Yeah.
All right. Easiest thing we do. Can you get an FBI agent on one of your talks? So, Spencer, I've done some stuff with the FBI. The FBI is a bit more complex to do a public speaking podcast with because it's got to go through their media office. So,
does that include retired? A buddy of mine, very close friend, beautiful, wonderful human being, is a former head of cyber for Manhattan for the FBI. So now he's put his 25 years in, just retired, still a young fella. Happy to get him on, Spencer. So
maybe we'll have him come on one of our CISO talks in the next few weeks.
Yeah, okay.
That'll be pretty cool. So David says, first time to bank robber figures out how to rob a bank, usually leads to arrest. I know a few that would. To Spencer's question about FBI people. So Medina said, sure thing here. Patrick says, gents, Todd Carroll is a retired FBI and part of the FACCNY. Eddie's also part of that org.
Didn't know that. Okay, thanks, Patty. Good man. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will DM you. So Paul, yeah, I'd love to have someone from the FBI on the show. Every time I've tried to reach out and get people from the FBI on the show, they give me the runaround because I ask tough questions, and let's be real, they're not going to spin me.
A friend of mine is retired if he's allowed to talk. So ladies and gentlemen, the engagement here was fantastic. It's past the hour, so want to be respectful of your time. Absolutely love this. It's going to be crazy shirt Wednesday every week for me. We'll convince James. We'll dangle some dollars in front of him and get him wearing that Biden shirt at some point. And I'm eternally grateful. This is a fantastic dialogue, and building more and more. I'm having people reach out to me, and thank you, by the way, throughout the week to continue these kinds of dialogues. And I'd love to have that publicly on a LinkedIn forum, let's say. But now, James, you said you're away next week. Is that right?
So yeah, next week is my wife's birthday, and like any good husband, I will be celebrating her birthday. Because last year, so here's a send-off story. Last year, she had a round birthday. She had a round age. My wife's unbelievable. I have the best wife on the planet. Okay. I literally do. I'm so blessed to have my wife. I ask myself daily, what in the world is she doing with a guy like me who only wears black t-shirts? My wife's unbelievable. But last year for her birthday, I planned this big old thing, and then I got COVID.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
And I was out for a month because of COVID. So we couldn't do anything. So I am
this time. Well, listen, I will fly the flag because the following week, or maybe the week after that, I'm away on vacation. So I'll fly the flag next week. That is all good. And let's continue to bring our questions and enthusiasm and energy to this. We will let you know over LinkedIn what the subject matter is going to be next week, and have a blast all at the same time.
Yeah, and check us out on Clubhouse. If you're not on Clubhouse, we're on Clubhouse Fridays, 4 o'clock, I believe. 4 o'clock, right, Eddie?
Yeah, 4 o'clock Eastern. I've got some invites if people need invites because they're kind of exclusive, so they gave me a few more. So if someone needs an invite, just DM me. I'll give you my invites, all good. And we would love to have, what are you calling that again, James? It's called the Cyber Couch. It's a therapy.
Yeah, it's the Cyber Couch, and it's a town square. You'll get to hear David Vaughn's voice if you join us on Friday. Yeah. And David is absolutely unbelievable. All of you guys are. Here's one cyber warning, though. Clubhouse is only available on iOS. If you don't have iOS, there's no way to get on Clubhouse. There's a fake app on Android that's luring people to Clubhouse, to a fake page, and then you get malwared. And then it's a credential harvesting malware. So it's harvesting all your credentials on your mobile device. So please, if you're not on iOS, there's no such thing as a workaround for Clubhouse on Android. If you've only got to be on iOS, and it's got to be on a phone. I don't think it even works on an iPad. I haven't tried it, but I'm not sure that it works on an iPad. So please keep that in mind if you are doing that. But if you are in Clubhouse, join us on Friday, 4 p.m. We'll be the Cyber Couch. Eddie will be there. I'll be there. David Vaughn will for sure be there as well. We'd love to have all of you there. Andrew Todd. Hey, guys. Andrew Todd's been trying to break into cyber, and let's give him a shout out because he just landed a role today in cyber. So well done to Andrew. I'm so proud of this man. What perseverance. What way to stick through it, and how well deserved by Andrew. Andrew's always on Clubhouse with us and hanging out. And do that. And David says Android users can call him and he'll put it on speaker. Oh God. Well done to Andrew for really landing a role. And I think every job should be celebrated. Andrew, a patriot, a veteran, a person who's dedicated his entire life to public service, whether serving through the armed forces or through being a first responder here in the great state of Georgia. Definitely well earned, and the cybersecurity community just got a little bit better.
There you go.
With Andrew there.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we do need a follow up from Andrew in 30 days, Andrew. So well done, buddy. And this is what I love about this community, man. Everyone's just so excited to get into this. And Frank's learned a lot here. Our final comment for the evening, especially about our government's role in IR. Thank you all for including those in the chat or sharing your insights and for paving the way for the next gen. Did he get a job with Palo Alto? That is the best company to work for, I hear. That is the best company to work for, I hear. Palo Alto. And you got it. He did. He did land in Palo Alto. I believe, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
He did land in Palo. So well done, Andrew. Guys, that's it. We're 8 minutes over. Respectful of your time. I know it's hard to say goodbye when we're on such a great little momentum trip here, but it's Passover on Saturday, and I still have a bunch of Jewish guilt to clean out before we do Seder dinner. So, folks,
everybody.
Yeah, congratulations, guys. See you Friday, 4 o'clock on Clubhouse. Yeah. Tomorrow, I'll be live 9 a.m. with the practitioner brief on the Cyber Hub podcast channel. So if you're following us on LinkedIn right now, because a lot of you are on LinkedIn, if you go to the Cyber Hub podcast CISO Talk and you turn on the notifications, every time I go live, you get notified. I do the practitioner brief at 9 a.m. every single morning, talking about risk, impact, and mitigation. At 1 p.m., I'll be live again for CISO Thursdays with the folks from Breaking Into Cybersecurity, and we have a great big announcement coming to you guys tomorrow as well. So have a great evening, great night. See you tomorrow morning. Until then, guys,
see you then,
stay healthy and stay cyber safe, guys. Take care.
Beautiful. Bye-bye.